Brad, thanks for hopping on today. This is you're my first guest, so we get to hash out all the problems. Like if everything just falls apart, you're the guy.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
here for
so
it.
why don't you go ahead and give yourself like a brief intro, who you are, what you do, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Nathaniel. I'm excited to be on. You've always been an interesting thinker when it comes to like jobs, employment dynamics, and I've known you for a few years, and so I'm excited to see explore some of this. Yeah, my name is Brad Nelson. I currently am the partner and co-founder of a dental group in the Midwest. We're called Positive Impact Dental. We're an acquisition-based dental group, so essentially we buy dental offices where the doctor's looking to retire, and we update the facility, update technology, and generally partner or hire new dentists. And then we centrally provide a lot of back office functions like marketing, HR, operations, and kind of bring things that are a cohesive management framework, but it still gives the offices, their autonomy, and individuality. So anyway, that's our company. I started it with a lifelong friend and my business partner, and it's been extremely challenging. It's been really cool and awesome, very fulfilling as well. I've been on the employee side. I worked my own jobs, did sales for a lot of years, helped work for other small businesses, and then I ended up starting a business with a friend. So I've kind of seen both sides. I've got an amazing wife, and I've got three sons, 10, almost 6, and 2. And so, you know, being there for my family and also having a sense of professional contribution and business and everything is it's kind of where I spend most of my time thinking about. So I'm excited to dive into it with you. So hey, actually, and that's one of the things I would love to talk about when it comes to jobs and business and everything is actually I call it work-life integration. And everyone's always looking for work-life balance. And I think that's like this impossible thing, especially if you're pursuing something. And so I think a more, and I know you put a lot of energy into that too, Daniel, but like pursuing work-life integration is actually like a much more achievable and meaningful path for me than trying to balance everything in like a crazy world that is inherently not balanced.
No, I
So
love that.
anyway, that's
That's a super
yeah,
catchy phrase. I'm gonna steal that
you can have
or
it.
borrow it.
It's
I'll borrow it.
borrow it. Do it. How
I'll
about
steal
this?
it.
Do it with me. It's gonna take a
Okay, there
lot
we
of
go.
us. Like do it with me.
There
But
we go.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's great. No, I love that. Like you've done both sides, and I love that like the dynamic of starting something with a friend, or even like co-joining that, because that's not something everybody can do. Like that's like a thing they say, like don't work with your friends or things like that. But I disagree. Like my wife is my best friend. Call me a loser if you want. She's my best friend. So we're always looking for ways that we can do something together because I think like she's the one that I want to go into that with. But also it's I'm sure there's ups and downs, and maybe we can get into that, like on that side because a lot of the guests I'm bringing on, a lot of my friends, they're kind of getting to this wall where they're starting something rather than joining a company, and because like with that, with the integration, the balance, like sometimes you don't get that as easily with on the company side or on the family side. Like, it could be one or both. And the easiest way sometimes to combat that is to start your own organization or your own company, but then that comes with the ups and downs as well. But I think
yeah,
there's something there because I do know that anytime you start something, you're a lot of time commitment.
yeah. I think um, the broad idea here is what can we do to break up the scarcity mindset we have toward our own career path, toward how life ends up looking. Like we all inherit a scarcity mindset to some extent, right? We, and then also we value and prioritize so many things, and society makes it seem like we can have all values of equal as a top priority, and somehow something will scratch every itch. And so I think really the interesting thing is to like break up where do we have scarcity? Do I have it in time frame, like I need everything urgently, or am I willing to wait on some of it? And like maybe I have 5 values, but maybe I need to prioritize my top one or two, and eventually later I need to think longer term. And so it's like, what time frame am I thinking on, right? Because like starting your own business could be the worst thing you could do if you want flexibility with your family. And so it's like, but maybe long term it's the best thing. So it's like everyone's different. It's like if we're talking about work-life balance, it's like, well, at what interval? Do I need balance over every day? How do I perfectly split up every day? Or is it over a week? You know, or maybe it's just over the year. Some season, like a tax accountant. No tax accountant has work-life balance between January and April. But over
You
the
just need to step.
year, but over the year they may have balance. And so it's like, hey, maybe I'm good with the push and the pull, or maybe I need a more even, like my life feels balanced on a weekly basis. And and maybe those needs evolve over time. But I think like getting more granular about what we need instead of just value everything at 100 and then wait till and wish we find some miracle thing where that happens. Like the first 2 or 3 years of us starting this company, it was much different than it is now. And it
Right.
just slowly cracked away at that vision to where, you know, and then sometimes you get pushed, you get a wave comes and throws you back underwater.
But I mean, I think that's what any like, even if you're not starting your own thing, there's waves of like in my company, like
Yeah.
as we're fundraising, like there's weeks that go by where you're like just nonstop, like coming up with new things, new ideas, new decks, new metrics, all
Oh,
these
any
things, and it's
cloud.
like
Yeah.
you know that it's okay. Like this is the way we're gonna ride it because it's gonna suck right now. Or like, 'cause I kind of like it. I kind of like that. Like
Yeah.
you're like
The thrill,
dived in,
the
you
rush.
dived. Is it dived? Dove in. You are in. You're all
You're
in
in it.
for that period. Yeah, you're in it. Like I don't know what
Yes, me neither.
what that
Me neither.
dove dived. I'll have to Google that after this. But anyway, you're in it like all in, and so it's like you don't have time to think of anything else, and it's kind of nice because it's like you're just like just. I mean, like you get so much work done, but then you hit that wall where you're like, I know I can't do this forever. Like you hit that like I need to stop. Like
Yeah.
I can't do this
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. It's like cyclical. And
Yeah.
and I think some people maybe, and that's like another thing where someone may have a scarcity mindset is like I see especially when it comes to if you're not running your own like if you're an employee, if you're working at a job, I mean, I have an amazing team right now. Like I have some really amazing people that work with us, and the thing that I see is um, oftentimes employees will hold a part of themselves back because they'll be like, well, they're not paying me what I'm worth. It's like ultimately your primary value should be for yourself, and they won't allow themselves to get fully sucked into those cycles of productivity and obsession. And it's like if eventually the employer doesn't value you, then you should definitely go look. But you will gain so much from just getting obsessed with something that you're developing you in that time, whether your employer values it or not. And I see some employees like hold some of themselves back, and it's like, dude, if you just thought about yourself, you would get further than worrying about what I can pay you or how much I value you. Like I do, but like, if I end up being, you know, a big jerk of a boss, then I'm going to lose that person, and they're going to go take that. They're going to go take that fierce, productive, creative obsession somewhere else. But
Yeah,
it's
no,
like,
that's
don't
an
hold yourself
interesting
back. Like,
outlook.
go ahead.
Right. No, I like that. No, I like that outlook because it's like you're we've all I think we've all been there. If you've worked, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna step into this because if I do say yes, now I'm adding more to my role, and I'm not gonna be any more. There's not gonna be any more compensation, or they're promised compensation, and it may or may not ever happen. But if you look at it as more of like an investment into yourself, like I want these skill
Yeah.
sets, I'm gonna say yes. It may not like do I may not enjoy this long term for 7 years because I may never get to the point where I need to be. But you're grabbing those skills that you can, if it's not the forever home or the I mean I think almost gone are the days of like your forever home and work. I
Yeah.
don't. I could be wrong. It could be coming back, but I don't see that. I see most
Yeah.
employees they're going from like 2 to like 4 years, making an impact, and then moving on because I think from what I'm seeing, people have this skill set and they're really good at that skill set, but they're not. That skill set is for a specific period of time. It's not really the. oh, I'm going to lock in here for 15 years and drive this impact over 15 years. Because I think there's people that maybe have that skill set. I don't think everybody has that skill set. And maybe something you can like develop, but I think you have these skills and you take them for a couple years or 4 years and you just kind of like keep copying and pasting them in these other companies. But if you don't ever go out there and say, I'm going to take on something else to invest in myself, you're never really expanding beyond that. And you're kind of locked in that 2 to 4 year range where you're like, I'm
Yeah,
always going to be here. I'm never getting above that. So I
yeah,
like that mindset because I think that's kind of one of those things people are very much pushing against taking on extra stuff. But it's like, no, you kind of almost have to if you have a growth mindset. Like, I want to grow my career. I want to grow compensation long term. And again, I think it's a time frame thing, like you said as earlier, like
yeah,
what's that time frame? Like, am I looking at like what does this look like for the next month? But rather, what's this look like for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years? And if we start looking at things in that time frame, but then break it down into like little mini goals, I think that's where this switch will happen where it's like, okay, we're all moving forward rather than kind of taking steps back.
yeah. And it's like people have different needs at different times. Like you may not be in a position to, you may need a certain amount of compensation just to live your life. If that's the case, you got to find someone who will give you that. And you maybe can't make some of those other qualitative investments in yourself during that period. Then maybe you get into a new period where my income needs aren't as high, or maybe I've stabilized my lifestyle a little bit. Now I can start taking some leaps without, because realistically, and I think we all know this intuitively, but it's not very explicit, um, is money is only one form of compensation. Like if you have latitude, if you have autonomy, if you have ability to make an impact, I need to feel that my actions make an impact.
Yeah.
Because like for instance, one of my North Stars that has really led me over the last, I'd say 10 years of going from, you know, working a job, being an employee, being actually on 100% commission to, running a company, was something I think I got from Brian Tracy. He said one of his principles was take actions of high potential consequence. And it's not high consequence, it's high potential consequence because they won't all turn into that. But if I'm constantly
Yeah.
saying, what is an action of high potential consequence, that will stop me from holding myself back and saying, well, unless I get dollars for this, I'm not doing it. You, and even I'd say get out of money more and say, can this opportunity give me relationships? I will take relationships as compensation. As long as I can pay my bills, I will take ability to create relationships as compensation way more than a little bit more money. A little more money, I'm going to spend it, but a relationship could be
It's
there
like,
forever. And you can't know. We think so transactionally. Well, if I do this much extra work, then I want this much extra money. It's like, well, if I do this work, I get to meet this guy and this guy and that guy. And in 3 years, if this guy doesn't value me, I still know all these people. And now I genuinely have wealth rather than just an income. I have a network. And so I think autonomy, latitude, money, relationships, like those are all different forms of compensation that I think we emotionally get tied to money. And so we end up prioritizing that, or there's a lot of stigma or activism or political pressure around the money part. And maybe this sounds biased coming from an employer. We actually pay our people and that's fine too. Like I'll even tell people that, hey, this maybe I'm biased. I'm your employer, so take it with a grain of salt. But but like we do pay people on average higher than the industry. But it's because I also want people who are looking at a more robust relationship and they're
yeah.
invested. And the money, I'm trying to get our people as much money as I possibly can. And believe it or not, that's a lot of employers' goals. Like I want my people to be taken care of because I want them to stay because I try really hard to find good people.
Right. And then there's like the cost, like if you're not looking at the relationship side, the cost of hiring, training, and the learning process is so like substantial, or it's like I'd rather give that money up front and like let it pay off long term. Outside of the relationship part, because I agree, like, you can move for 10%, 15% increase, but like first off, that doesn't always work because you have that on your job history, which I don't like doing that. I've done it a couple of times trying to find the right role. I hate doing it. But I didn't do it for money because like money is money. Like I'm like you. I hit that like where it's like I have the money I need to take care of my family. We live okay. Like obviously, times change and like stuff costs way more this year than
more
it
is always
did.
better. Yeah.
Right, more is better,
Yeah.
but it's not. That's not my. That isn't my North Star because like you start getting into this mindset of like, this is where I hate the hustle culture where it's like you're kind of like always like pushing, 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 and it's like you never really enjoy what you have. You don't enjoy your career. You don't enjoy the people you're with, or the people you're working with, the projects you're working on. It's like you're just always like pushing like what's next, what's next, and I don't like that mindset at all. Like I don't. I enjoy taking a step back and saying, "Hey, I'm taking off a couple of days. We're going to wherever. We went to Arkansas this weekend. Loved it, and I didn't have to think about work because it's like I'm not looking at like what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. Like obviously, I'm starting a podcast, so like I'm thinking about that with this project, but it's not like I don't have those like blinder goggles on for every aspect of my life where it's like I don't. That gets old and it gets exhausting. It leads to burnout, leads to depression, leads to all these things that people don't ever talk about.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we should focus more on the relationships we're building. Like, obviously, money has to be there. Like, you can't, for most people, they can't take a 40% pay cut to go be happy. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
like, that's us. We can't do that. But you can find that, like, this is just the right zone where everything kind of meets the right line. Because, like, I had a boss or employer, I don't know what you would call them, but said don't work for the company, don't work for the pay, don't work for your boss, don't worry about all those things. Like, well, like where's the place that you feel you are gonna fit the best? Because it's all those other things, like you're gonna have a bad boss at some place. You're not gonna be compensated the right way or the best way you see fit. There might not be these cool, crazy trips that you get to go on to all these giant software companies. But like, what is it you're looking for, and go for that. Like, I want to make an impact. I'm all about that. Like, I want to know what I'm doing is pushing the company forward. I don't want to be just one in a million at a company. I want to be the one like that. If something happens and it's a drastic change, it's likely me or my team. Like I want that to be. I don't know. Maybe that makes me conceited, but I
Yeah.
want that. I want that in
No.
my resume. I want that like just for like my own like. I'm gonna say identity, but it's not my identity, but it's like what I strive to like be. I want to be the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Or what? Yeah. Or I think a lot of that, like what I hear you saying is like, what increases my ability to contribute, right? And like, how do I contribute? And everyone wants to feel like they're contributing, but I think that's where if we feel like we're in a transactional relationship, just like where, okay, they're just paying me, I'm filling a role, I'm doing menial work, they don't value me. Well, okay, great. Accept it for what it is and then decide, is there enough value in this for me to keep doing it or not? And if there's not, then leave. If there is, get what you can get out of it. And then when you're ready for that next layer, like you will have gained things by working in that environment that will make you a better leader. And so I think there's a lot of like our current self pretending we know it's fit for us when like sometimes you just need to take the pressure off where we have this perfect job that pays us what we want with work-life balance or how do I get into this certain company and start thinking in terms of, for instance, what you're talking about with either multiple projects or how do I contribute, or like that boss you had. I didn't mean he sounds like a smart person to tell you that, because what ultimately ends up working better for people is focusing on energy management rather than time management. If you're with a boss that wants max productivity every minute, like they're focused so much on time management that they're not realizing that like they have you doing a set of tasks that's just draining your energy and you're not effectively contributing. I would way rather, my team be thinking, and we'll do an energy audit. What gives me energy? What takes energy away from me? And you can do that when you're either looking at a certain job, you're analyzing your own job. Say, okay, how do I still am going to do these things that take energy because they're required of the job. I think every job probably has 20 to 70% stuff that just kind of sucks no matter what. And so it's like, hopefully not, hopefully not 70, but try and get it to like, if it's at 40%, you like box in that 40%. How do I get through the stuff that sucks my energy done as quickly as possible? And don't give it my energy. I'm just going to do it to get it done. Like I've been doing stuff the last couple months that involves things I don't really love doing. They don't light me up. And I used to freak out about it and be like, I can't believe I have to do this stuff. Oh, this is just sucking. But it's like, wait, me freaking out is actually taking more energy than if I just bury my head, calmly do it, and then save the energy for the stuff that gives me energy and like double down on that. And then I
Yep.
start widening that and finding new opportunities because I'm not just in a mental battle with myself about my job all the time.
Yeah, no, I like that. Like, cause I'm with you. I even go so far as like, when you start to get into that, like, I'm dreading this, you're thinking about it so much while doing other things, like, oh, I need to get onto that. And it's like, it just kind of becomes this giant, like,
It's
almost
an energy
tumor in the
leakage.
back
You're
of your
leaking.
brain. Yeah, it's just like a
Well,
constant
a tumor
battle.
is a great example because like a tumor is sucking energy away from your healthy cells or your brain. And so it's like that's just not good energy management. You're like feeding this
Yeah.
obsession, this like unhealthy obsession, you know?
Yeah, no, and I'm at the point I think, and I don't know if it comes with age. I feel like it does. Maybe I'm 31, like, and I think I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older. And maybe it's because I've had kids. I don't know what it is. Like if it's just a natural progression as you go through your career, but like finding those things that you don't like doing and doing them, but also maybe finding a way that you can do them faster. Like what is it like? This is taking this much time, this much of my energy. Maybe I'm going to devote some extra energy to analyze it and from a different side to say, how can I get through this quicker? How can I streamline this? Is it like I need something from somebody else to help? And like so you're kind of like taking a little bit from you and adding it a little bit to somebody else because maybe they like doing it. Or AI. Like Jesse's my wife for everybody else who doesn't know. Jesse is like very against AI. She's like, this isn't good, this is the ultimately
What's
gonna
going
lead to
on?
like the downfall. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I've been using it like crazy. I think everybody does, especially in marketing. But if you're on LinkedIn, I mean, I feel like just in work in general, and if you're in like an environment that's like tech forward, you have to almost be using. But
Hey, Nathaniel, so have you asked AI like what do you do when your spouse isn't supportive of it? Like have you used it
no,
for
but
like
relationship
how do
management,
we
yeah, that's
win
great.
how do we win her over to our
Yeah, like
side?
my wife does not like you. She sees you almost as a mistress. Like, what am I doing? What the fuck
What
should
should
I
we
do?
do? What ideas do you have,
Uh,
AI?
Right. Honestly, that might work with ChatGPT, because like the longer
I
you
think it
build your
would.
thread, the more refined it gets. And so it's like, like I even just open it up. It might just say, "What Jesse do this time?" Or "What did she say this time?" That
Yeah.
would be
You'd
so
be
fun.
like,
This would be like a fun
you,
challenge.
yeah, you'd be like, babe, I told AI all about you and it gave me this advice. And she'd be mad at first, but then when she hears how good that advice is, she'd be like, you can chat with
Yeah.
ChatGPT more.
Here,
Yeah.
I need you to duplicate yourself so now I can send you. Actually, and I upgraded my thing, so I have the $20 a month. I'll just create a whole, what is that called? The,
Make your own
the
GPT. You'll
G,
do Nathaniel
GPT,
GPT.
yeah. Nathaniel's
Yeah.
like relationship management GPT. Here we go. For Jesse only, because it's like this is just for my wife. This is for
Yeah.
you. I could
Yeah.
do that. This could be fun. I'm actually gonna probably play around with this because I think it could be an interesting like back and forth between her because she's really against it. Like honestly, like, you have to send her a text and say, "Hey, like I heard you love AI." Whatever. And she'll be like, "I hate it." Like every time I bring it, like, "Oh, I'm
Well,
using AI." I was like, "I used AI to come up with my logo." She's like, "You're the problem." I'm like, "I can't." I'm like, I
well,
don't. I'm not at the point where I'm gonna spend a bunch of money on a designer. I would love to, but
well,
I'm gonna use AI for now.
I'm gonna send her a link to this episode and be like, hey, Jesse, I was interviewed on a podcast recently. Check it out. And then she'll be
Yeah.
featured on episode number one.
Number one, like, everyone's gonna be like, Jesse, why do you hate? I should. I'm gonna tag her in it too. Be like, this episode on LinkedIn. So then she'll be there and she'll read all the comments about why do you hate AI so much? Like why?
Yeah. Well, when I was thinking about some of it, when I was thinking about some of the stuff you and I were chatting about in terms of like how are people finding opportunities in like non-standard ways, like your point about a lot of the attention gets directed to a select few companies. I think that's another thing where the scarcity mindset shows up is there are thousands of companies, and there are
Yep.
thousands of companies where they are creating roles and compensation that are not listed out. And if you have the stomach for some ambiguity and you have actual soft skills on communicating around some ambiguity where it's not just a spelled out offer with everything you need, like sometimes as I've been hiring people I really wanted to get, they start asking me questions, and I can tell, like, as we were growing quickly, I was trying to get people out of larger companies, and they'd be like, "Well, what's your package? What's your offer package look like?" And I'd be like, "Honestly, it's almost like I'm going to create it with you." And some people were like, "No, I just want
Yep.
to know what's my package." I'm like, "Okay, they may not be a fit for me in the space of the company I'm in because I need someone that's going to tell me what they need, and I'm going to see how close I can get it." And I may be able to scratch their itch in a different way than they're expecting. And if a candidate is very rigid in that, I just may not be able to meet their needs, and I'll just have to move on because I don't want to create an expectation that I can't meet. Like we don't have a great way to track mileage right now. And I just tell them, hey, I don't want you incurring costs because you're using your vehicle. It means I need to pay you gas plus some tires, plus oil changes. Cool. I don't want to create a burden, but I don't have some big elaborate process on mileage reimbursement right now. And some people are like, well, I want mileage. Like, and that's a silly example, but I think the point is in the job market, if you're out to get out of the normal, like I apply for a job and I get an interview, there's literally millions of options and so many ways that you could tap into the relationship networks that you have. Like I started a business with a friend, and that didn't just come out of nowhere. Like we'd known each other for years. We talked about all kinds of things. I never knew I'd end up working with him for sure. Um, but anyway, I think just I don't even know what the nugget of the point is there, other than like there are a lot of options, especially if you're willing to get out of where it's like and call responsive companies, where it turns into more of a conversation and exploration that maybe materializes, over time. Because ultimately, people just want problems solved, and sometimes a candidate will create more problems for themselves than they realize by becoming a problem. you know,
Yeah, no,
um,
that's good. And I think like when we were talking about this, like we tend to just like look at these like just behemoths where it's like they're so overshadowing everything else because like, oh, they have the 1 month remote every year to go visit people, and like they have these like crazy compensation packages where it's like it's unbelievable because they're such a huge company. It's like, what about the company that's going to let you grow your career? You're gonna grow with them. You're gonna make a giant impact. You're gonna be the person who starts this whole thing. A lot of the companies I've worked with, especially in the very beginning with marketing, were all small, very regional based companies that then kind of like spread out. And I worked with a company. They had a website. They didn't have anything e-commerce. And I mean, they basically just said, you can do whatever you want with the website. Like that's it's all on you. If it
Yep.
works, great. But if it doesn't, like we're not like obviously they'd be out like whatever they paid me, but like they weren't out anything because I didn't break anything. There was nothing to break because it was fresh. But I learned so much from that company, and I'm very thankful I made that. It was just we met at a conference. Like I'm all about like maximizing the people you meet because you never know what's going to happen. Just I ran up, talked to him, and he's like, "Oh, I live in this area." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I've heard of you. I've seen your logo, in the industry I was in." And then we got to talking over a couple of drinks at dinner, and he said, "Hey, man," he's like, "You seem like you know your stuff. We're looking to maybe do something like this. Would you be interested?" I'm like, I'm not really. I don't know. I'm not really looking to move. And the more I started thinking about it, I went home. He gave me his card. Of course, you go to the network and it just like kept I was like, oh, like I think I could do this with them and have this full autonomy to like push this forward. And then like that would be like the best challenge to myself. Like, do I know as much as I think I do? I didn't. But but I'm a firm believer in like admitting you don't know what you don't know and then learning on the go. Like I love trial by fire. I'm a very, if it's not, everything's not like on fire around you. Like I don't, I think I thrive in an environment where I am like maybe somewhat underskilled. And I think I saw a post about that actually, where if you meet 100% of the requirements for a company, like don't apply because you're not going to grow. Like look at like the 60, 70, 80% range because you're going to grow into that. And this is another one of those things like, you're kind of upskilling yourself with those types of roles. But I'm a firm believer that like because I was kind of not necessarily ready for that role, but
Yeah.
also that they gave me the full autonomy to do this is why I am where I am
And
today
you
in
can
my
find,
career. Like,
and yeah, and I guarantee there are thousands of businesses out there. Like businesses are up to their neck in problems they need solved, and finding people to help them solve them is one of those problems. And so if you can make it clear and simple and easy, I guess this would come down to, me as a technically a small business owner, maybe we'd be considered larger to some people. We have 250 team members and we're in 3 states. Um, and it sometimes it feels big and complicated, and other times, like realistically, we're still a small business. I'm still very involved, hands-on. And so I would say, like, if we're talking about this route of how do you find these cool opportunities that aren't just listed, it's by helping create clarity for people who need problem solved, right? Like, for instance, like we don't even know how to clarify sometimes all the problems we need solved. We have to come up with that clarity to post a job ad and hope to get someone approximately qualified. But if
yeah,
someone can say, here's the problem I can solve, but I also want to solve these other ones. Sometimes I think nowadays businesses are worried about smart, ambitious people because they're going to be like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to meet their expectations and afford them. Whereas I've had it with a team member where I said, I've tried to create the clarity, but I think there's a lot of room for candidates to create this clarity, especially when it comes to small, medium-sized businesses. Where I'll ask someone, I'll say, listen, what income do you need to where I just don't have to worry about that for a while? Like, I want you to continue growing. I'm not saying there's no growth, but I want to focus on the work. What's your number that you need to just not worry about that for a while and let's focus on work. I don't want to have to tiptoe around asking you to do things. Like, let's just go for it. And the people who are like, yeah, I just want to go for it. Let me go. Like, I want to get them their number. That way, all my energy can go toward working with them and developing that person and investing them in them
yeah,
to solve problems. And then later, it's like, I'd rather get them a raise later without them asking because I'm like, look what we just did over the last year. I'm just going to
that,
change their pay and not tell them, and here you go. Because it's like, I ultimately, the business wants their energy focused on providing value for the customer or client, not on managing internal drama, right? And so the more clear you can be as an employee, as a candidate, you will set yourself apart as a candidate. You can say, I'm willing to do anything. Here's what I'm good at, but I'm also growing and learning. There may be opportunities you guys have that I don't even know yet till I get in there and get my hands and my eyes on things, but I'm going to give you all of me, but this is what I need. Like make your needs clear, and then it's like, hey, I know what this person needs instead of the guessing game. And it's like, here's what I need. If I have that, I'm good. I want to know there's growth. I want to know there's more income, but this is what I need. Let's just go for it and start solving problems. Like that. That's just music to my ears when it's like our energy can go toward providing value for customers and clients, and and instead of like all the guessing game and kind of internal company politics that tend to like distract from that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and then you
Maybe
kind of
everyone
get into
doesn't.
that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say sometimes you kind of get into that like that back and forth where you're just like always like you know that like they're gonna want more money. Like, and it's like you're always having that conversation where it's like it's so much energy wasted. Whereas like if you can just find something, maybe that's not as skilled as that other person. Maybe they, you're not the VP, but maybe you're the director. Or maybe you're not the director, but you're the manager. Or maybe you're just the you're not the manager yet, but you're the underneath that. But like you see that as like your career point, and it's like, okay, how do we get you there? We can pay you more to like almost like grow into these roles. Where I think that's another like undervalued like process where it's like a lot of companies they want this massive impact right away. And I think sometimes you don't always get that. Like you're gonna pay for that. Like there's it's just like a scale. Like, what do you want more? Do you want to like, have this massive impact within like the first 90 days? Or I mean, even that sometimes is like unapproachable, but like the first
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
and like if you want that, like you're gonna pay. Like maybe we find the person that has the skill set we're looking for and wants to drive impact, but doesn't maybe have the skill set yet. So let's get them where, maybe we compensate them a little more than what they're currently at to like grow into this and kind of like eventually get them up there where now they're driving this massive impact because they're invested. They're fully in. They have the money that they're looking to get, and they're having the career goal of like, I want to be here, and like we're growing with them. I think that's another thing that a lot of companies aren't doing, which they should be. Like I think that's a good way to. I don't. Yeah, I hate being the guy that talks numbers, but sometimes like a company has, they only have so much money they can spend. I mean, that's the truth. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to find a person that comes in under budget a little bit, and you can give them a little bit extra, and you can grow into that role where they're actually happier rather than the person that's at the top of your budget, who's then in 60 days, 90 days, or 1 year is like, I'm out the door because you're not able to grow. I'm not growing my
Yeah.
career. I don't have the money that I'm constantly looking for. And I think like that's something that I think a lot of like, especially the like smaller companies, like if they're willing to do that, like, but I talked to small businesses and they want that big impact for the less money. And it's like, well, they don't come hand in hand. Like
Yeah.
you got to be willing to bring the two together almost, where it's like you're not going to pay here and get the results here. Most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, very rarely, unless
Oh
you,
yeah. No, and I think like yeah, it's if you want to bring in someone at the top of their game that's like interventional, we need this result quickly. Yeah, you will pay up for that, right? You're also at a much higher likelihood to not have a good culture fit in that situation because you
yeah,
want quick results. They're going to come in and change things quickly. And then as a business owner, I'm going to freak out and say, well, okay, they're trying to get me those results that I asked for and I'm paying for, but at what cost? Well, they don't care at what cost because they need to prove their value in a way, right? Whereas someone that's going to develop, and the reality is most problems in most businesses are harder and slower and more expensive to solve than the business ever realizes, right? And you want to
yep,
be working with someone that realizes that so you can make realistic expectations. And I think as candidates and team members, the more my team is asking me for clarity, the more helpful it is for me because I don't know always where their lack of clarity is. If someone asks me, what are the time frame expectations on being able to make this happen? And I say it's 60 days, I'd rather them say, I've been thinking through it. Here's the pieces we need. We could push this at 60 days. I think it's more likely to succeed if we gave it 90 days or we gave it 120. If I know they've thought through that, I'm good with it. It's just I
yeah,
want to know that we're pushing it, right? Okay, are we pushing it though? Yes, we are pushing it, and I think 120 is actually a better result. As long as we're getting there, another 60 days, that's great because if they failed at 60 and I have to replace them, it's going to take me way more than 120.
yeah,
And so I think just clarity on timeframes, clarity around, all those things. I see a lot of opportunity in small, medium-sized business for that type of communication, maybe more than some of the big players. But honestly, I kind of had a similar path to you where I really preferred the small businesses because I had room to just go solve problems. And I would see stuff, be like, I could do that, I could clear this out, figure that out. And I didn't want itemized pay for it because I just loved the ability to go around solving stuff. And like now I've accumulated a lot of skills that I never would have had I slotted right in at some giant company. Sometimes I wish
yeah.
I had like the politics skills to navigate these big layers of humans. But at the end of the day, I think business and jobs comes down to people and problems. If you're good with people and you can solve problems, like it literally doesn't matter what the thing is. Like you can get in
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah, everything else you can learn. Like you can learn how to
Yeah.
presenting. I used to be terrible. Like I was like my worst nightmare would be talking to people in front of like a presentation. That is, if I did the presentation or if someone else did the presentation, it was terrified. Like you can learn that. You can learn all those other things. You
Yeah.
can't learn like how can I just talk to you as a person one to one? Like how are we? Like what we're doing right here, you can't always learn this. Like if you have that skill set, you can learn everything else. Like and I truly believe that I'm a career transitioner. I think you can take those other things and make it work in other ways. Like and I'm very glad I didn't just slot myself in as well. Like tons and tons of stuff. Like I can solder. I actually just side like I okay. So we'll kind of go into this, but I'm a very big hobbyist, and I've done a ton of different hobbies. But one of the things I've done in my career, like I used to work on printers, and so I learned how to solder, fix circuits, all those things. I love doing that still. I have my own like
Yeah.
set. I got broke it out today because my blow dryer. Like, I'm a cheapie. I love to just fix everything. So I got to
You're
stash my
resourceful.
chest is always resourceful. Yeah. Yeah. That's a better way of looking at it. Just is like throw this stuff away. I'm like, no, I'm going to fix it. So today broke out my soldering iron, fixed my blow dryer because on high, the switch, it had fried on the high side. So I just resoldered it and replaced the low to the high, flopped it. Freaking works great. Love it. Beard is like better than ever because it's not on low. And like so I love that I have that skill because I'm never going to use that in marketing. I mean, ever. I don't know that I'll ever, unless I work for like a circuit company where or maybe like I'm on site somewhere and I'm like I'm fixing like our
Or
light
maybe you'll be
display
an
or something.
actor in an ad. You'll be an actor in an ad, probably soldering something.
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll
like,
do it for
oh,
real.
this guy like oh wow, he's really soldering. Like, yeah, I am, man, I am. But so like that kind of leads into this because again, I'm a hobby person. Like I think it's very important to have something outside of work, outside of family, outside of all these things that take all this energy because like you need something to fill yourself back up. Like
Yeah.
kids do that, my wife does that. Like those all things give energy. They'll take energy too. So I'm curious, especially as you started a business. We're friends. I know how much time you've spent, especially in the early stages. My wife worked with you, so I know how much time
Yeah.
she spent, and she spent less than you spent. And so, like, I know the amount of time that you poured into the business. Like, what are the things, or like, what's the thing that like helped you step back and kind of fill the void that is career, life, all those things that like just suck all this energy out. What's like it doesn't have to be one thing. Maybe it's not like just one thing did it. Like maybe it's a lot of things. Like what's one thing that you want to talk?
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I really like the idea of work-life integration because I want all of my life to help feed the other aspects of it instead of feeling like we live in a very compartmentalized and specialized world. And so I think we tend to, like, for instance, in this specific example, when we started the company, we did not have money to hire anyone to help with anything. Like, and so my hobby was all those departments. Like, and I liked it. My hobby, I would go disassemble a dental office, and I learned on a real dental office. I started cutting things to pull stuff out, and then I had a water leak, and I'm like, what does this tube connect to? I don't know, but I learned really quickly how dental equipment works by chopping things apart, And so it's like my hobby was like I'd rather think about my life in terms of like mental, emotional, spiritual, and even like the blending of those, or like intellectual versus tactile. And so it's like I had to pick something that had a lot of variety. So one time I'm working on a building that's very tactile, and I'm thinking through mechanical processes. Then I'm thinking about how do we write good job ads and attract the right candidates. That's more my creative side. And so in the beginning, I tried to just view the company as my hobby. Like,
Yep.
and if you look at my email footer, like I have people think it's a joke, but I'm actually serious. Like my email signature says full-time adventure, part-time COO, right? Like, am I a full-time COO? Yeah. I spend a lot of time doing it, right? There were periods of time where it was 80 to 100 hours a week for many months. Um, but I viewed it also as an adventure. And if I didn't, I would have just hated life. And so I think initially it was how do I get my needs to overlap? For instance, we used to just rent kind of some crummy commercial space for our office. You've seen it. And eventually we moved now. Our headquarters is on a 5-acre farm with a remodeled house, and we have a fire pit in the backyard, and we've had campfires. And my kids come and do a campfire, and I'm inside on a meeting, and they'll come pet the horses and like, and I've just had the vision to try and bring these aspects of my life together. Or like last week, I brought Isaac with me on a 3-day trip to Kansas City to go visit our practices up there. And he came with me, Dr. Freely, he came with me to the offices. I want my kids to see me engaged in work, not just as a slave, but as, I care about these people. I'm working with people. I want them to see my kid and that I'm a real person. And so I think as much as I can get those things to overlap, um, I want to, but also I would say just picking simple things. Because, for instance, I used to do soldering and build electronics, and I would build lasers, and I have some actually I built these things up here on the shelf. Um, and I don't have time right now, and I have kids set that I don't have time to learn about integrated circuits and capacitors and all this right now. But what I can do is we have a fire pit out back, and campfires are my hobby, and we'll cook dinner on them, and we'll roast marshmallows, and I'll have friends over, and it's so simple. And so I think depending on life balance, I'm gonna pick a really simple hobby and say, man, it's been too long since I had a campfire. Campfire, I throw some wood on, I light it, I sit there, and the fire burns away my stress. When I have more bandwidth sometime, I think I may pick a more involved hobby. I may want to learn something totally different. I've always dabbled in learning how to code. I don't need to know how to code for my job right now, but I'm always interested in it. And so I think it's good just to have my mind active there. And someday when I have more mental capacity, maybe I'll pick a more involved hobby. So I think it's like that balance of complicated work, simple hobby. Maybe there's a period where I have simple work and I allow it to be. I quit making work more complicated than it needs to be. I get in, I do my work, it pays my bills, and maybe I flesh out a new hobby that ends up being married with my work someday. And just I quit trying to calculate and judge and filter so much. And I think our current culture, especially around like hustle culture, they want you so narrowly focused that you end up missing the
Yep.
relationships and the intangible ROI, especially if you're in sales or marketing, like there's a lot of squishy ROI. And if we're pushing always for the concrete hard ROI, we're gonna miss the deep ROI that maybe doesn't come to the surface for a year, maybe 5 years. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I love that. I love the idea of like if your work is complicated, like maybe finding that simple hobby. Like I'm kind of in that now. Like my work is there's a lot going on, and like I'm doing something like you can see my don't look these numbers up because you won't see a trophy. Like this is a participation medal only. Like I'm not in it for for the awards,
Dude,
but
you
I
guys
started
watching
running.
you guys do that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I no, I we started running, and like that's my hobby, and like it's not like it's not a hobby. Like I'm not doing something. Like to me, I get to go. I listen to my audiobooks, and it's like I get to like just check out. Like I'll like for the last so like I've worked up to Happy Hour. It's freaking brutal, but I love it. I love it. I can
Dude.
listen to my audiobook 2.5 hours. I'm not fast. Again, I'm not competing like to like win anything, and like the only way I'm ever going to win is if I'm the only person or there's only three people in my age group, or if they start going by weight class. I don't know why we don't do that, but I think I might be able to win if there's a weight class. I don't know. Like, we should take like wrestler style, but it's simple. Spending tons of I'm spending a ton of time. I'm waking up freaking early to do it, but it's not like I used to do a lot of music. I know that we've talked music. We both, I don't, you probably play maybe more than I do. And I used to play for hours. This is purely decorational now. Like these strings are probably like 4 years old. Like they sound horrible. And I'm like, every time I play, I'm like, I need to replace these strings. I mean, if I replace them, I'm going to need to replace them again because I don't play enough to do it. And the amount of time I would spend on replacing them would be the entire time I would have to do it. And I'm like, I'd rather just play and listen to horrible strings. I love the idea of
Well,
like
dude,
finding something simple that works.
well, the other interesting dynamic that you're bringing up is like, especially if you work from home or especially, I mean, anywhere, work nowadays is so like cerebral and mental, and everyone's got anxiety, everyone's got depression, everyone's got, we're all addicted to caffeine and probably more alcohol consumption than people prefer. It's like we're caffeine up all day and then we're drinking or doing whatever you need to do to chill at night. And we're on these substance cycles, so we can keep this thing running at 100. But it's like what you're doing is it's like, hey, I've got this intense mental job. I'm gonna go run, and me moving into my body instead of just everything being so mental. And like, if I have a really It's like people watch TV to relax at night. Well, my day-to-day life is dramatic and intense enough that I don't want to hear like crime documentaries to chill. Like we built a sauna here and we just go turn it off. We get away from our phones. We don't watch TV and we go sauna and sweat it out and it's quiet or we'll listen to music. But it's like, how can you balance so that everything doesn't land here? If I got a heady
Yep.
job, I may not want a heady hobby. Like if I've got a heady job, I may want a body hobby where you're just running and it's like, the mental clarity that comes from moving out of your head is actually tremendous. And
Oh,
so it's like,
it's
how are we
phenomenal.
balancing our whole system instead of how do I consume more content? How do I add more value? How do I get more information? It's like we got plenty of info. We're like dying from it. It's like how do we get more into our body and become more aware and actually become better at like assimilating and discerning information and relationships instead of just cramming as much in. Because like or like I'll look at consume versus create. How much of my energy is going toward consumption versus creation? And we'll get in these
Yep.
consumption loops where we're just like reading and listening and listening and listening, but it's like, what's coming out of this thing versus just what else going in, you know?
And I think that's very true, especially with social media. Like I'm off of all social media except for LinkedIn, which my wife says is social media, but I kind of push back on that. But we'll say it's social media because you find yourself just in that consumption zone where it's like you're spending all your waking moments and like even for like the first like month or two after I deleted it, I would find myself like swiping to like click it and like just like unconsciously, I knew where it
Yeah,
was, and I would just
yeah.
like swipe, click. I'm like, oh, it's not there anymore. Like now I'm like opening up my insurance or whatever. It's like, okay, no, it's like it's so crazy how fast it can just be ingrained. And I think like you said, like if you have a mental job, maybe it's something you do physically, or if you have a physical job, you don't want to go home and like run 6 hours if you're like out in the field working cows all day. You don't want that type of
Yeah.
hobby. Maybe you want something to say, okay, I'm gonna like work on coding. Maybe it's like whatever it may be. I like that draw. I think that might be something that as I talk to people, I might find that that's a very common theme, or maybe that's a theme that should be more common because it's something that you need to do for yourself to like find that balance in your body, not necessarily like your work-life balance or integration. It's like, what's the balance for myself of like, how am I going to keep moving at the efficient level that I need to run at to have all the energy that I can for all the aspects of life?
Yeah, totally. Well, we think we're our head, we think we're our brain, but like if our body's not good, if like relationships and the emotional stuff's not good, like that pulls again energy management. That's pulling energy away from our whole system. And I think like on the create consume thing, or like with the phone and the apps, like I've just you bringing it up made me think of it. Like my main bar on the bottom is I try to make them create apps rather than consume apps. And like my home screen is my create stuff. So it's like my OneNote is in my lower bar. It's like that's where I always see on every screen. My OneNote. It reminds me like, am I writing something down? Am I creating something? Am I maybe I have a new idea or thought, or I've been writing more poetry lately. And so it's like I'd rather have that there than Reddit. I'd rather have
Yep.
OneNote and or my communication. I want to keep in touch with family on Marco Polo. I'm gonna put like meaningful apps here, and I'm gonna like hide the social like away, or I won't even have them on my home screen. I have to go clear to the app drawer
Oh
and like
yeah.
find them. Just so it's like I've got 3 clicks to get there versus I have 1 click to get to OneNote or my other things like that.
Oh yeah. No, I found that I started like so I deleted all video as well because I'm as I was running I was like okay I want to spend more time like I found I was reading a ton of books which not like reading is bad but like I was like I am spending so much of my time and energy like just constantly reading it then what's the next book, what's the next series, all these things, and I was like I'm gonna stop, I'm not gonna do any of that, and I'm gonna find like myself less tuned out to things too because I found that like I was like okay like my kids are playing by themselves, I'm gonna go read my book for maybe 10 pages or whatever, rather than like I'm gonna go sit in a room with them and play with them because independent play is great when it happens, but like sometimes it's like I want to be a part of it. I don't want to just be like chasing the next independent play so I could read my book for another 10 chapters or whatever.
Totally.
And Sorry, my daughter just walked in. Thankfully, she didn't come over, but she, you know,
Perfect.
I'm standing, so she wouldn't have been able to be seen, but you probably could have heard. But
Yeah.
so I deleted all those things, and I even like started moving like Safari. I found out I was like googling like what, you know, I was looking at the news. I was like finding something to like get my fix on. So I was
Something
like,
to
okay,
consume. Yeah.
I need to like
I
move
know. It's
all of
funny.
this stuff off of these like front apps. I think I'm gonna do what you do, like just like have the create things. I like that like division where it's like if you want to do anything else, you gotta swipe a bunch of times to get there. Like because it's too like I mean when
Yeah.
I want to Google
Or
something, I'm
only,
like yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like I'll only do these things like on a computer, but not my phone, and just, I'm not going to have the Facebook app. I'm just going to use it on the computer, or I have to use a Chrome browser, but yeah, just like introducing
Yeah.
friction into the process.
Hey, thanks for hopping on today.
Okay.
Like, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to like all the insight that I'm gonna dig out of this as I go back and rewatch it and kind of take the notes and things.